Baby girl, you're so damn fine, though. Wanna know if I can hit it from behind, though. I'm sipping on you like some fine wine, though. When it's over, I press rewind, though. Talking bands, I got it. Benjamins in my pocket. I traded my truth for some robins. And he playing boy, man, but he's gonna rob you. Yeah, I got the Glock in my robin. 17 shots, no 38. Yeah, I got the Glock in my robin. 17 shots, no 38. She's
Celtic beat Rangers for the third time this season. 3 Premier League managers are sacked. Spurs stopped Chelsea's 13-game win streak, and there were a couple of scorpion kicks. Apart from that, you haven't missed much. This is the Football Roundup. I'm joined by Bryce Donaldson, Luke Barry, Michael Gaughan and Jamie Braidwood. This is a special episode of the show exclusive to YouTube in which we are recapping the stories we missed over the winter period prior to our next live show on Radio ENRG. And where better to start in Scotland, where on New Year's Eve, Celtic travel across Glasgow to face Rangers for the third time this season. Rangers took the lead through a strike by Kenny Miller, but goals from Dembele and Sinclair meant Celtic were able to go 19 points clear at the top of the Scottish Premiership. So I'll go to you first, Michael. How do you feel Celtic fared against their city rivals?
Far too good. They didn't start very well. Obviously, Rangers got the goal. But after that, there was a turning point in the match about half an hour in when Scott Brown absolutely hacked someone and got booked. That really got Celtic going, I feel. Then we got the goal before half time, and then from then on there was no looking back, really.
And as well, on that booking of Scott Brown, Brendan Rodgers had said himself that Celtic had been training scenarios and training with 10 men in case that a man was sent off, and Scott Brown looked like he was going to get sent off. What do you think changed for him as a mindset for the rest of the match after that booking?
For Scott Brown, he didn't go into many challenges afterwards. Probably there was an incident where Barry Mackay was breaking away for him. On another day, where they just brought him down and took the yellow card, but obviously couldn't. And I think he was much more sensible. But Scott Brown of 6 years ago, let's say, would have got sent off in that game. So this shows you how much he's actually matured as he's grown older.
Yes, it was definitely quite a typical Celtic Rangers match in the fact that Kenny Miller scored, Scott Brown got booked. There was an instance where Scott Brown stood on I think it was an advertising panel in front of the Rangers fans, kind of like
good laugh.
Pushed them a bit. I'll jump to you, Jamie. I know you saw the match. I'm going to jump to the fact that Rangers fans leaving quite near the end of the match. Obviously, this was very early on in the day. There was a massive match for Rangers to get maybe close that gap out just a wee bit for them against Celtic, but 10 minutes ago fans were leaving the stadium and there was opportunities for Rangers to equalise. I think most notably that strike from Kenny Miller that struck the post. What do you think of that opinion, Jamie, of these fans leaving so early on?
Well, I mean they were getting beat at home in the Old Firm, but I think obviously in the closing stages of the game, Celtic were keeping the ball very well and by the corner flag. They were really frustrating Rangers and the fans, and I think that was just, it was such a professional performance by Celtic, and they did the sensible thing there by killing the game off, taking the ball into the corner flag. Moussa Dembele was very, very good in that. So they just basically killed the game off, and it was a very effective and professional performance from Celtic.
So obviously now pressure is on Warburton. Now he has lost 3 times this season to Celtic. I think the only manager who's equalled that record his first season in charge consistently is Gordon Strachan when he was at Celtic. So what do you think Warburton now needs to do with the squad? Does he need to add to it? Does he need to sell players on who are not doing the job for him? Yeah,
I mean, obviously it's clear that individually Celtic are far, far, far superior to Rangers. So they are going to have to improve that team a lot. Even if Celtic had dropped a point and Rangers had drawn the game, the gap would have still been 17 points. I mean, it's not games like that are going to define Rangers' season. It's games that they need to really establish themselves as the the second best team in the league, and that comes by beating teams like Inverness and St Johnstone, where they have slipped up in the past few weeks. But yeah, again, they will have to improve that team because Celtic just look far superior to them individually.
And as well, Michael, we were talking about Celtic prior to the show, and we spoke about them bringing players in. I think I said they didn't really need to bring players in. It was more a matter of offloading players. But you had mentioned to me they had picking up a few defensive-minded players. Do you think that's the right decision, or do you think they should stick with what they've got at the moment till the end of the season?
You can always improve your team, in my opinion. You can always improve it, and I think Brendan Rodgers, he knows the league's done now. He's kind of looking towards maybe next season and the kind of European playoffs or qualifiers. And the season just there, we had Sviatchenko and Siminovic both out for injury. So we had to play away in Astana. We had to play, what was it again, Owen O'Connell, who's 19 years old, and with Efe Ambrose at the back. So I think he's kind of wanting to avoid that again. He doesn't want to be short of players for next season, and I think he's actually pretty good as well. And the two players he has brought in, they're both young, so they won't go straight into the team. They might go back out on loan, or they might just slot into the youth team. I don't know, but I think it is probably a smart move. He's been right in most things so far.
Is there any players you think should be set away, maybe on loan or a permanent transfer itself? I think Chris Commons to Hibs on a full-time transfer seems likely. Is there any other players who maybe excel from the squad? I think for me, Efe Ambrose is the first player to rings to mind. Yeah,
I'd say players like Liam Henderson as well. My boy Joe Chalmers went down to Queen of the South there on loan. Aidan Nesbitt he's extended his loan at Morton. It's mainly just all the young players I think should be sent out on loan instead of just kind of going between the development squad and the bench. Because I don't think that does much for them, in fairness. And a couple of the goalkeepers as well. Logan Bailly, I've not seen him in months. He's just he's the third choice keeper, but he never gets a look in at all. Don't know, he's on quite a bit as well. So for the benefit of us and him, probably offload him as well.
Well, only time will tell who goes and who stays, but we're going to jump over to the east side of Scotland now, where we had a man on the scene at the Fife derby. Bryce Donaldson was there. It was a 2-0 win for Pars against Wraith, their bitter rivals, and there's only now a one place gap between the two. Bryce, how did the match fare?
It was absolute madness, to be honest. It was, the two biggest teams in Fife. It's always been quite a special one for me, having family. Obviously I'm from Dunfermline and family in Kirkcaldy as well, so it's always quite a heated affair, shall we say. So when I got in, I didn't really know what to expect. Dunfermline were sitting 9th, and Wraith were sitting 5th. So all signs pointed saying Wraith should have the better of us. And in the first half, Wraith Rovers were a lot better at closing us down, being the first man to the ball. But as the match went on, Dunfermline did get more comfortable. They did score very early on. That was against the run of play, and that set Wraith back a wee bit. In the second half, however, it was completely different. We've got a boy on loan from Celtic at the moment called McMullen, and he was just the absolute playmaker of the team. He was constantly chasing balls down, making runs. To be honest with you, it could have easily been 3 or 4. There was 2 chances in particular that just they really should have put away and bounced off them and didn't go in the net. But it was really good fun to watch.
So where does Dunfermline go from here? Do they progress pushing up that promotion spot in the league, or do they go for maybe a cup run, or try to hold their business in the league so far?
It's their first season back in the Championship now. And they were down in League One for a few seasons, which wasn't brilliant for them. But they're back in the Championship, and they're now currently fighting it out against Queen of the South, Ayr and Dumbarton. They're all on 1 or 2 points apart from each other. Dunfermline at the moment have the best goal difference, so they're sitting 6th. I think if we can finish mid-table this season, get a good grasp back on the league, and then next season push for the higher up places challenge.
Now, as we're staying to the east side of Scotland, we're going to talk about Hibs versus Dundee United. Hibs are coming off a 2-1 win against Falkirk, whereas Dundee United did lose to Dumbarton from 1-0. It's a top of the table clash. I'm going to jump to you, Luke. Who do you think this win's more important for to put a really stamp in this league?
Given that it's being played at Easter Road, I'd probably argue Hibs, but I think basically when the Hibs are involved, there's always generally a good atmosphere, which will help them on the pitch. It's an interesting league of the Championship, and a lot of people probably dismiss it, think it's not that entertaining, because Rangers are left, so people might not be as interested. But I think Hibs, after the Scottish Cup win last season, they probably had a bit more appreciation almost. Starting for myself, I feel like I respect the club a bit more. It's just kind of, I'm starting to know more fans of having lived in Edinburgh a year. Back to the game, back to the game. I would say it's probably more important for Hibs, but you could argue on the other side that because Dundee are away, they'll probably want to try and be a bigger statement for them if they can beat Hibs at Easter Road. But I think if Hibs don't win the game, or at least don't get anything from it, they'll be disappointed with it.
Before we start recording, it was revealed that it is a sold-out match. A lot of fans, are going to be at this match, and it's going to be a good atmosphere. Do you think that's going to have an effect on Dundee United? I think that pressure and atmosphere from the Hibs fans.
It could potentially, yeah. Because I know if I was a player, I wouldn't want to go to Easter Road and play. If you've got a sold-out crowd, obviously that the noise will be big. Hibs fans are known for being very passionate as well. So I think Hibs do have a good edge there. If they can use that to their advantage, it could work for them. Being a top of the table game, we could either see a really boring one, or it could be like a 3-3 draw. We just don't know. I hope that nobody gets too heated and they get red cards and whatnot, because you don't really want to see that too much. But I think I would plump for Hibs on this one. But if Dundee can get at least a point or even 3 from it, it'll be a big statement from them, definitely.
So, depending on which team loses, if it's a Hibs loss or it's a Dundee United loss, do you think who's going to have that more effect on them going into the rest of the season after this? It will be a wee break until the next match.
I think a Hibs loss will be worse, principally because it is at home. For Dundee, I suppose I wouldn't say they've got nothing to lose, but going to Hibs, they're behind them in the table. If they get something from it, it's just a big bonus, really. If Hibs, it's a great opportunity for Hibs to stretch a gap a little bit. So I don't know if a draw would be disappointing for them, but if a loss would definitely not be great for them. It wouldn't necessarily help morale, but having given that break, it might actually work in their favour. So you can have time to regroup and stuff like that. If there was a game just the week after, we could see issues. But I think for Dundee, definitely, it's a great opportunity for them. In quite a lot of ways, a bonus would just be a point. Because I don't think that many will expect them to win the game. But as I said, Hibs will definitely want to get something from it. Probably all 3 points.
And lastly, I'm just going to touch on the new Hearts manager, Ian Cathro. His first full-time, first managerial role, not being assistant. He's had a wee bit of a rough start to his managerial campaign. His most recent result was a 1-0 loss to Aberdeen at home, but he did get a win 3 days before that. It was a 4-0 win against Kilmarnock. I'm going to jump to you, Michael. Obviously, more recently, Hearts have had a history of sticking with youth and building upon that. But for this transfer window, does Cathro need to bring in players? I think the likes of Tony Watt has left them. He was on loan from Charlton, but he has now returned to his parent club. Do you think he needs to bring in players, or do you think he needs to stick with the youth system and go from there?
I don't know, actually, because Nielsen did bring in a few more experienced players this transfer window, like in the summer there. So they actually do have a decent team there. And I think they're good enough to finish second as they are. It's just the way they manage it. They've just been beaten by Aberdeen at home. They can't lose games like that. Yeah, he's not had the best start, but I think the team's fine. I don't know what's went wrong with him. But as I said before, you can always improve your team. So I wouldn't blame him if he's got his own people in. Maybe people that he knows. I don't know. Probably could bring some people in.
Well, I'm sure it's not going to be the last we hear about Ian Cathro this season. So jumping to the Premier League now, and the way we're going to do this section is we're going to talk about the top 6 down, and then we'll talk about the rest of the respective leagues. So we're going to go to the top of the table of the Premier League, and it's going to be Chelsea. Chelsea had a 13-win streak, equal to the Arsenal invincible record. They were 1 win off breaking that record, but as Spurs do, they beat them by 2-0. Dele Alli got both the headed efforts to win the game for Spurs, and Conte's team has finally lost points. I'm going to jump to you, Jamie. I think this team has completely changed since, I think, most notably that loss against Liverpool, where they did lose 2-1 at Stamford Bridge. They were playing a 4-2-3-1 system and now have moved to a 3-4-3. How has that worked for them so well? Obviously, on paper, it looks like an attacking formation, but it's now moved into maybe a defensive mind and attacking.
Yeah, well, I mean, in those two defeats at the start of the season to Liverpool and Arsenal, the defence was extremely vulnerable. So Conte in this run, he's moved back to a system that he's familiar with. It's enabled to bring the best out of Costa, out of Hazard, and out of Pedro, out of those front three. It's a really balanced team. The fullbacks in particular, we've touched upon this in previous shows. Marcos Alonso and Victor Moses have done incredibly well. You know, I mean, Moses isn't even a fullback, so he's done incredibly well to adapt to that position. And as a system, it worked. Just because they lost to Spurs doesn't mean that is not untrue. I mean, they won 13 games in a row. It was always going to have to come to an end at some point, and Spurs in their own right are a very good team. I think a worry for Chelsea is, and this is something that Spurs managed to do in that game, is that Spurs matched them. They went 3-4-3 themselves, and they really exploited that gap in between Moses and Azpilicueta, in between the right-sided centre-back and the wing-back. We saw the two headers. They were identical goals, so that would potentially be a worry for Conte. Maybe that's an area that for the rest of the league they might be able to exploit. But Chelsea, yeah, it was an incredible run by Chelsea. And yeah, they deserve to be top of the league at the moment.
And good job to you now, Luke. It was big results for Chelsea in this win streak. I think people argue that they were facing kind of the lower half of the table teams, but they did beat the likes of Manchester United, Manchester City, and then the game before this clash against Spurs was Stoke, which they did. Stoke looked like a threat, equalising I think twice, and then Chelsea did go on to win 4-2. Do you think teams have now sussed out how to beat this formation, or do you think they're going to go back on a win streak?
That's a difficult one to answer because obviously it's hard to predict the future, particularly in the Premier League. But I think the Stoke game, with Stoke scoring twice, is a sign that perhaps teams have. And because they've been playing it for almost a couple of months now, they've had time to study it. Spurs managed to completely outclass them. It was a strange game because Chelsea were like, all their shots were pretty much firing over the bar. Costa had missed, not a sitter, but it was a good chance, and he completely skied it. It seemed like they were maybe crumbling under pressure a little bit with the record in sight. But I don't think this spells disaster for Chelsea by any means. The Stoke game in particular, they were paying back to 2-2, and Williams scored within literally a minute to make it 3-2 again. It shows good resilience, and they're a complete team. I don't think we've seen that from Chelsea for a while, actually. And I think it does show the impact Conte's had, because we all remember last year when Mourinho was there, and everyone expected him to win the second league title in a row. Obviously, that didn't happen, and he was sacked mid-season. And I think, as Jamie touched on as well, the return of form of Hazard and Diego Costa is massively important for them. And obviously it's a tight league to predict, but I don't think this will be issues. They probably won't be quite as dominant as they have been, and they've got difficult games coming up, probably most notably Liverpool on the 31st of January. But I don't think it's an issue for Chelsea. If I was a Chelsea fan, I wouldn't be worried right now. But it's interesting to see somebody can look at what Spurs did, for example, and try and press them and see if they can get a result against them.
Now, last thing I'm going to touch on for Chelsea, it's going to come to you, Bryce, and I'm going to ask you, this Chelsea team is very strong. They've got a lot of balance in the team from front to back. But do you think anyone needs to be brought in? I think a name that's been thrown around at the moment is Van Dijk, between him and Manchester City. Do you think they need to prove anywhere? Or do you think it's a matter of just keeping consistent with the team?
I think it's a wee bit quick to start throwing out speculation of who they're going to sign because they've lost one game. To be honest, Chelsea have enough money to get whoever they want, really, but they don't need to at the moment. Van Dijk, Southampton have said that they don't want Van Dijk to leave during January at least. So I don't think they'll be able to sign him. And I don't think they're going to be too active in January. They do have a lead at the moment, so they're not going to be pressure buying or emergency buying anyone. But I don't see them signing anyone now, and I think they'll get a wee bit more active when the summer comes around.
And now we're going to jump to Liverpool. We're joined by two Liverpool fans here. Obviously, Liverpool have
Can't
been.
tell by Jamie's room, can you? That's
Nah.
impressive.
Can't really tell from what we can see right above me. Liverpool have been quite impressive this season, but more recently beat the likes of Manchester City on New Year's Eve. Jamie, you were there. How was that match?
Probably physically the most intense match that I've ever been to. There was so much on the line, especially the fact that Chelsea had won that afternoon. They were at the time 9 points clear of Liverpool and 10 points clear of City. So both teams going into that game knew that they couldn't afford to lose because the gap would be too big, and both teams couldn't afford to draw because then the gap between both teams would be too big. So there was so much on the line, and it was a real dog of a game. It was such a battle, just because of how much it meant to both teams. Liverpool made it so difficult for Man City, and we saw that because the amount of sloppy passes they were giving away, and it didn't look like a Guardiola team. It looked like Liverpool really got to them, and it was a really good goal as well from Liverpool, a really great header from Wijnaldum. They basically from then on managed to outfight City, and they really earned the win. Saying that, I mean, the amount of effort they put into that game, they then had a game 2 days later away to Sunderland. They looked a completely different team, Liverpool. They looked so leggy, so tired, mentally as well, fit perhaps. That could tell by the drop in performance and the 2-2 results, which is disappointing because obviously having beaten City, it's then disappointing to drop points away to the 19th team in the table.
I'm going to jump to you now, Michael, running off that thought of that draw with Sunderland. I think Liverpool took the lead twice, but it was 2 penalties from before that got them a draw. David Moyes coming up against Jurgen Klopp. Do you think it was just a moment of bad luck for Liverpool, and do you think they've really missed an opportunity to make up those points with Chelsea?
Probably a bit of both, to be honest. I've not seen it, but I'm going to assume Liverpool were the much better team. And obviously Sunderland having 2 penalties is not ideal for Liverpool. And probably Sunderland will be feeling quite lucky that they got a point out of it, because they have been rotten this year. That's why they're 19th and Liverpool are second. Yeah, it's the kind of game Liverpool kind of have to win anyway to kind of keep this hope of the title alive. Obviously you got the big ones against City and stuff, but they beat City, and then they're going to Sunderland and drawing 2 days later. But it could be fixture pile up. Seems to happen quite a lot with some teams where they win the big games and then draw away or lose away to kind of lower reaches of the table teams. I don't know a lot about the Premier League, obviously, as you can probably tell by the way I'm speaking here. But yeah, opportunity missed for Liverpool, but yeah, other teams will drop points as well. So it's not.
I think Jurgen Klopp himself commented on that fact of the Premier League fixtures that he had. I think it was 2 games within 3 days. I think it was a 2-day gap between the two, where Sunderland had more time to recover from their last Premier League fixture. So it definitely did take a toll on Liverpool, as we saw. And going to jump to you now, Luke, another Liverpool fan in the show. Going to jump to you on injuries and the fact that the African Cup of Nations is just rolling round. Obviously, you've got the likes of Matip injured currently. Coutinho's now been injured for a while, looking to make a recovery soon, but saying that Mane will be going to the African Cup of Nations, it is believed. What is Liverpool going to have to do? Do they have to bring in players as replacements in this window for them, or just replacements for the time being, or do you think it's a matter of making permanent big transfers to compete with these transfers when they come back from these tournaments or injuries?
Well, first off, I don't think any big transfers have been made, especially not in January. With Mane, it's interesting because Klopp's kind of got 2 options. He could bring in another winger to sort of replace him when he's away, or he could revert to playing when Coutinho comes back. Coutinho, Firmino on either flank, having a striker up top, probably in Origi. But you could have Alana up there as well. The squad is very versatile, which works in our favour. There's a lot of players that can play in a lot of positions. But you mentioned the injuries. Matip is a big loss in the heart of the defence. He's been very solid this year. Henderson as well is out for, I don't know how long it is, but he picked up a knock against Man City, which is a big blow really, because I think we missed him against Sunderland. You could kind of tell the midfield didn't have as much energy in it. And of course that will be down to the fact there was fatigue and there wasn't much rest time, but Jordan Henderson is probably one of the biggest engines in the league. He can run for like miles and miles and doesn't seem to get tired. Coutinho as well has been a sad loss for Liverpool. He's just, what he can do with the way he strikes a ball is just something you can't teach. And I think for a team to be missing that does not help them at all. But he should be back relatively soon. Daniel Sturridge, I think he's injured again, but that's not really a surprise. And to be fair, he's not played that much this season, so it's not going to be the biggest loss. I think most Liverpool fans will be hoping that Mane can do well away in Africa, but hoping that his team doesn't do too well so he can come back. But I don't think Klopp will bring anybody this window. I don't think he really needs to, because he's kind of established his team now within reason, and it's mostly working. There's been a few key injuries, but I think most Liverpool fans would have taken second at this point at the start of the season.
Jumping back to London, we're talking about Spurs. They beat Chelsea recently with a 2-0 win, which we spoke out earlier in the show. I'm going to jump to you, Bryce. We're going to talk about Dele Alli and Harry Kane. Obviously, they've had really good form recently, kind of moulding well together. What do you think went well for them? Like, is it just been a matter of them two gelling? I think a lot of people are saying they are reminiscent of Premier League greats such as Thierry Henry and Frank Lampard. Do you think it's a matter of good form, or is it just, as I said, them gelling well?
I mean, as you say, they do have kind of a good partnership. The thing to remember about Dele Alli as well is, whilst Frank Lampard and kind of Steven Gerrard, who he's being compared to at the moment, they did have kind of good teams about them. For a large part of this season, Dele Alli was working with Vincent Janssen, who's been absolutely terrible, to say the least. But since Harry Kane has come back, found kind of a good partnership, a good run of form, and they do work well off each other. Because they're both English, they are able to kind of work in the national team together as well. So I think that'll help them a wee bit. But I mean, I think I was told that Harry Kane has scored the same amount of goals in the same amount of time as Thierry Henry.
I think it's close to that, yeah. And as well, lastly about Spurs, obviously there has been their rivals Arsenal have finished above them quite often in the past few years. Do you think this is finally the time Spurs will finish above Arsenal this season? They look likely to do it last year, but obviously after Leicester City won the league, as we know, they kind of fell off a few games, and the last game of the season they did get thrashed by Newcastle 5-1, and Arsenal made up the points to finish second in the Premier League. Do you think this is finally Spurs' season to finish above the rivals?
Well, the thing that Spurs have going for them is they're very consistent. They don't concede a lot of goals, so they are able to kind of grind out points quite a lot of the time, whereas Arsenal are a much more exciting team. Players like Sanchez, Walcott, Iwobi do have a wee bit more flair to them. They are kind of very attacking. So it's hard to say at the moment. Obviously, with it just being January, I think we need to have a couple more games before you kind of start to see where that's going to go.
Now we're going to go to Manchester City. We're going to jump to you, Michael. Obviously, you have seen Manchester City play in the flesh when you went down to Manchester for that Champions League fixture at the start of December. But results haven't been going Pep's way recently, especially against those big teams. I think the most recent big loss was that loss to Chelsea, which they did lose at the Etihad by 2-1. Liverpool as well. I completely forgot that. We did speak about that earlier in the show. But I'm going to jump to you about the fact of Fernandinho. Fernandinho has seen 3 red cards in his last 6 appearances for Manchester City. Do you think it's a lack of professionalism on his part, or a lack of Pep Guardiola and the managerial side of not putting more professionalism in their players?
I really don't know. The probably sending off been like, what have his sending offs been like? Because I've not seen any of them.
His sending off in the Chelsea game was like Cesc Fabregas kind of tapped him in the face, and then he kind of
mostly just
pushed him up.
aggression,
Was
really.
that the big brawl?
Yeah. Was a bad tackle. Was the one.
And more recently, he was sent off in the Burnley match, where it was a bit of a reckless challenge. He did win the ball, but I think it was down to the fact that it was a reckless challenge to begin with, and it was a dangerous place. So that was the reason why he was sent off. Do you think, as I've come back to the question, do you think it was Pep Guardiola himself?
No, I don't think it's Pep Guardiola, because in all of his previous teams they have been very disciplined. We got Barca, we had Bayern as well. The Chelsea game was down to sheer frustration, I think, because getting at home by, at that time, I think they were Bermuda's challenger to City, or was it 1 or 2? I don't know. They were quite high up anyway. I think that was just sheer frustration, and it wasn't just Fernandinho who was getting involved. All the Chelsea players were fighting, like David Luiz had a go.
I think it did kick off from Aguero's challenge on David Luiz.
The challenge against Burnley, I never seen it right, but if a player gets sent off for honestly trying to win the ball, I don't really mind. That's fine. Try it if you want, but I don't think it's down to the management at all. I think it's pressure on the players really, from the management and the media as well, for having spent so much over the past few years and not having much to show for it at all. And it's just frustration from the players as well, just because they were miles ahead of everyone and then they've lost it.
Do you think it's a matter as well of obviously these teams in the Premier League do sign players in the January transfer window to kind of bolster their attack, midfield, or defence, or even their goalkeeping position? But I think for Manchester City, do you think they need to improve on the defence? I think a lot of criticism has come from the likes of Kolarov not being putting 100% in. John Stones, he's still very young, he's learning. I don't think they're going to be see a likes of a goalkeeper, considering they bought Bravo, even though, in my opinion, he has been not the best goalkeeper in the Premier League this season. So do you think Manchester City need to bring in a player for that defence who could maybe act as a mentor for John Stones and possibly work with Vincent Kompany as well as he comes back from injury?
Is this for me, yeah?
Yeah.
Alright, okay. Well, finding a player with that sort of experience who can slot into a Manchester City team at the top of the Premier League is obviously pretty hard. It's going to come with a price tag. I think they probably should try and get more people in, particularly at the back, because that's where they've been struggling. But you've still got John Stones there. He's only 24, 23, I don't know.
He's still very young.
Yeah, he's still fairly young, and you got Kompany coming back as well. He's always quite good. I don't know. Probably should strengthen at the back, and yeah, that's all I've got to say really. Strengthen at the back. They've got players going forward that are fantastic.
We're going to jump to the fifth team in the table, and that is Arsenal. Their most recent match was a 3-3 draw with Bournemouth. Their own player, Jack Wilshere, being on loan to the club. Bournemouth had a 3-0 lead, which was to much surprise, and as you would describe, a coupon buster. Sorry, but Arsenal did bring it back to level the game against a 10-man Bournemouth team when they were 2-0 down. Well, when they got 2 goals back, Bournemouth went a man down and they got 3 goals. Good jump to you, Jamie. On paper, this really should have been a game Arsenal should have won.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were talking about Spurs earlier and Spurs' level of consistency. This is something that Arsenal seem to do. They just seem to win the matches they need to win, but then they just collapse in the most extraordinary way. And going 3-0 down to Bournemouth was it in an hour? It was just... Yeah,
it was definitely like... Yeah, it was right after the second half.
It's just catastrophic, and you just can't afford to do that. They did well to come back and at least get a point. We were having a discussion earlier about the amount of time that Giroud wasted after he scored the equaliser. I don't think that's much of an issue. He didn't waste that much time, but it maybe does show that the team doesn't have a winning mentality, because a title-winning team would go back to the centre circle immediately and go again. But I don't think that's an issue. I think the issue is the fact that Arsenal found themselves in that position in the first place, going 3-0 down. There was the results earlier. They went 1-0 up away to Everton, and they went 1-0 up against City. They lost both games. And those are the issues. And it's the fact that this is happening season after season. Giroud, it's quite ironic. He scores the best goal he's ever going to score in his life, and then he scores an equaliser in the last minute, and he still finds a way to get criticised because he does a bit of a daft celebration. I feel a bit sorry for him, to be honest. But these problems will happen with Arsenal, and they will continue to happen, and it's why they will not win the league in the foreseeable future, even with the players that they have at the moment.
And as well, with that celebration we were discussing, they were against a 10-man Bournemouth team. Once they did bring it back to restart the match, they did not get that winning goal, which some would have hoped for. Arsenal fans themselves would have hoped for. And the game, at the end of the game, if you've not seen yet, you can see Sanchez himself being, best described as utterly furious, throwing his gloves on the ground, and saying an array of things that
We weren't going for it anyway.
He was also. I was watching the Crystal Palace game, and Arsenal
Yeah.
were 2-0 up, and Sanchez was equally furious at this point because he missed chances and he wasn't getting the ball.
Do
So I think.
you think this is the time for? Do you think
He's a fiery player, but
Do you think Sanchez will go in the summer?
it might be alluding to something a bit more, that he's a bit fed up at the current situation. There's a lot of talk at the moment about the contracts that Sanchez and Ozil have both been offered, and it's not enough money, and he would receive more money elsewhere. So yeah, it's a big time for Arsenal to make sure they lock down Sanchez and Ozil. But,
If you were, let's say, an Arsenal fan or on, say, the board of directors at Arsenal, who would you offer that contract to? Would you offer it to Ozil or would you keep Sanchez?
well, both. I mean, you need to show ambition.
If you had one option to keep Ozil or keep Sanchez, who would you go for?
I'd keep Sanchez, but I mean, you need to keep both. To be honest, I think losing one would be.
I think they
just
could lose both to
catastrophic for
China.
them.
Yeah, I think that is potentially a possibility. But we're going to go back a wee bit further in time to that game against Crystal Palace, and anything Henrik Mkhitaryan can do, Olivier Giroud can do better. He did score quite an impressive scorpion kick, as it's described, where he was crossed the ball from the left hand side from initially starting to play further down the field, and he was standing when he struck the ball with his left foot, struck off the crossbar and went in. I'm going to jump to you, Bryce, and I think we have already discussed this beforehand, but whose goal was better? Was it Olivier Giroud's or Henrik Mkhitaryan's?
Easily Olivier Giroud's, just because his was actually onside.
Mm.
Yes.
Yes.
Mkhitaryan's, although it was an amazing effort, like, by him and everything, but at the end of the day, it shouldn't have counted. But I mean, it's still a good effort to kind of show the ambition to try and get there. The other thing is Giroud was kind of a wee bit more marked and stuff like that.
Mm. Lastly, in the top six, we are going to talk about Manchester United, a big favourite for Jamie and Luke. And speaking of that, we're going to jump to Luke to talk about this section. Man United have had a good run of form as of recent. I think it's 7 or 8 wins on the bounce in the league.
It's only 6. Behave yourself.
Well, Jamie has done his research probably more than me, but go to you, Luke. Is it down for the change of formation for Mourinho? He has instead of going for a 4-2-3-1, he's now opted for a 4-3-3, and the likes of Henrik Mkhitaryan, Paul Pogba, Zlatan Ibrahimovic are all really gelling well in this squad.
Yeah, I would say, I remember at the start of the season, Man United were briefly top. I know it seems like a long time ago now, but Ibrahimovic was scoring goals pretty much every single game he played, and now he's kind of managed to recapture that form. And as you said, formation could be like a big pivotal part in that, because he's got all his main players now actually playing to their potential. Pogba now is finally looking like the kind of player Man United thought they signed in the summer. He still doesn't look like he's an £8 to £9 million player to me, but he's doing the job. He's scoring, he's passing, he's tackling. You couldn't really expect too much more from him. And Mkhitaryan as well. Obviously, he had his scorpion kick, but he had a great goal against Tottenham last month, I think it was. And yeah, I just think for Man United, it's an interesting one because they're doing all this hard work, doing all those wins, and they're still down in 6th because everybody else is doing well in front of them. And it's kind of a shame for them, I suppose. But I think the key debate I think many people will have is I wonder why, like, I think it was against, I can't remember who they played most recently, but Jesse Lingard was playing West Ham, yeah. Lingard was starting ahead of Rashford, and to me that's a weird decision. Because Rashford came on and immediately made a difference, and to not have him in the team, to me, seems a bit daft.
Yeah.
But I would say that the return to form of Ibrahimovic is pivotal for them, definitely, because he can score from pretty much every situation you give him.
Yeah, in that match against West Ham, it was comes a deadlock between the two sides, despite West Ham getting an early sending off in the game. But Rashford came on for Lingard, set up the first goal for Mata, and really made an impact for the rest of the match. Do you think now Mourinho has to keep a consistent side? We see a lot that you can't really predict what formation, what starting lineup Mourinho's going to go for. Is either going to be one defender's going to be swapped out, a forward's going to be swapped out? Do you think it's better to keep giving people game time, or do you think he's going to get a good team and then just go with it?
I think he has to establish the first team, because I think that's the main problem that David Moyes and Louis van Gaal both had when they were at Man United. Is Van Gaal in particular would play a different team every single week, and you literally couldn't predict it. You'd have players playing in weird positions, and players playing that you'd probably never heard of. But yeah, I think it's important to give all the players game time, but most of the a lot of their players aren't experienced players. So he by now he should know. He's been at the post for half a year now. He should know who his best team is, and I think he's pretty much found it. And the defence is more of an interesting one because obviously we've had Valencia's drop back to right back in recent seasons, which you probably wouldn't have expected a few years back. But it does seem to be working, and it's worth remembering they do technically have one of the best goalkeepers in the world as well. So if the defence is the one that's the most questionable, I think they've got a lot of players that could potentially come in, and with Eric Bailly being injured as well, if he comes back, will he get back into the team? But the midfield and strike they've got at the moment is definitely the best they've got, and I don't see any reason why they should change that up.
Lastly, we talk about Wayne Rooney. He was injured in a warm-up a few matches ago. He is back in training, but do you see Rooney getting back into that side? I know we've seen in the past that Mourinho himself has said he's like a number 9, a number 10 kind of sort of player, but in the system they've got at the moment, it's a 3-balanced midfield, like kind of box-to-box midfield, with the likes of Ibrahimovic being on good form. Do you see Rooney getting back into that side?
In a simple answer, no, to be honest. I feel sorry for him in a way because he's been a great servant to the club and he's a great player. But just the way it's going, with his current form and his current ability, he's dropping back a bit. I just don't think he'd be a good substitute, but I just don't think there's a place for him in the current Man United setup.
So now we're going to jump to the other side of the Premier League table. It is the bottom half with the relegation battles. We do have the likes of Swansea, Hull and Sunderland in the relegation zone, with Palace quite in close proximity. And saying that, 3 of those 4 teams I have discussed have had their managers sacked. We have seen the likes of Bob Bradley be dismissed at his role at Swansea. Alan Pardew was dismissed at Palace, and Mike Phelan was dismissed at Hull. But some good news, I think, for all of us is that Sam Allardyce is back in the Premier League. Going to jump to you, Michael. Sam Allardyce has had a crazy year. He's went from Sunderland at the start of the year of 2016. He kept them up. He got the England job. He got sacked from the England job, and now he's back with Palace. He's got a history for keeping teams up in these sort of positions. So are you confident that he will do the same this time round?
Who's he gone to? Sorry, Hull?
No, Crystal Palace.
Oh God, they're too good to go down. That's all I can say about that.
What do you think?
Their front four is ridiculous. I mean, they've got Benteke, Townsend, Zaha, and Cabaye. I mean, if you combine the transfer fees for all of those alone, it's ridiculous they're in the position that they are.
Yeah.
Cabaye has seriously dropped off in form recently, though.
Do you think it's down to maybe Pardew's effort as well, or do you think it's more for the players' side of form?
Well, it's the players. It's the players. I could go into Crystal Palace and keep them up. Honest to God.
Well, if there comes a job vacancy,
the front four about 50 million or something, 60 million.
Well, if we had a job vacancy at Crystal Palace in the near future, we know who to contact first. Jamie, do you think what's next for Alan Pardew? Do you think he's going to try wait for a while and get a job back in the Premier League, or do you think it's a matter of him taking over a Championship team and bring them up and prove himself?
That's a good question. I'm sure Pardew's pretty much been in the spotlight for a while now, so I think he'll appreciate the break. He was once tipped to be the New England manager. I don't think that's going to happen now. I think he'll just have to wait patiently for his chance. I'm sure he will get one eventually, but 2016 was not his year, that's for sure.
Now talking about Hull, it was to my surprise that Mike Phelan was sacked at his role after being given the job on a full-time basis after being an interim manager at the start of the season. Bryce, I'm going to come to you. And do you think it's down to Phelan himself and his managerial tactics, or do you think maybe it's down to the board of directors not granting Phelan the transfers that he wanted, or just any transfers really at the start of the season?
I think it's more down to Phelan was kind of given the job. He's not really shone amazingly, and Hull have already got this new manager kind of tipped to be the next Mourinho. He beat Arsenal last season or was it the start of this season with Olympiacos. They've got him in fairly quickly. They've obviously been chatting with him for a long time, and they just clearly feel that he is the man to take them in a better direction than Mike Phelan.
And now we're going to jump to Swansea. Look, what's happened at Swansea this season? They've had 3 managers in the space half a season. They had Gary Monk at the start of the season. he was sacked. Now he's at Leeds, doing well at Leeds, saying that. They brought in Bob Bradley. He was there for, I think, less than 10 games, and or even just over that. And then he's been given a sack as well. And they brought in, I think it's the former assistant at Bayern Munich. Do you think it's more a Swansea forward planning for going down and rebuilding, or do you think it should be the objective to stay up with the players that they do have?
Well, I think if they're planning to sort of look at a restructuring build, like not hoping, but sort of maybe expecting to go down, that's a silly mentality to have, because we're only in January. We've still got 5 months left of football. But the Swansea situation is a weird one, because they were once a pretty, I wouldn't say great, it's my bit strong, but they were doing pretty well in the Premier League. Bob Bradley wasn't given much time, but then again, didn't do much to convince anyone that he was a particularly great manager. But I think this season, what they're missing badly is Ashley Williams. His move to Everton can't really be underestimated. He was a rock at the back for that team. And without his leadership and his defensive ability, I think they are struggling. They still have Gylfi Sigurdsson, who's a great player. Fernando Llorente is a weird one as well. He kind of goes under the radar a little bit. He scores more goals than you might think he does, but then again, I just don't think they have enough game changers in their side. Nobody that's really going to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and pull a result out of nowhere. I do think they'll go down. I don't think they'll be embarrassed. I think it'll be a close fight, but I don't think they're going to stay in the Premier League. And whoever comes in next has a pretty tough task to do, to be honest, because I think a lot of players in that dressing room are quite demotivated, especially when they consider what they were doing before. Like, they won the League Cup just a few years ago, and now they're pretty much staring back and going down to the Championship. So it's worrying times for Swansea, but I do think if the right manager comes in, he gets the belief back, maybe a couple of January signings, they could return to decent form again.
And that is us. Unfortunately, Jamie had to leave us abruptly, but we're just going to sign off from now. I want to thank Jamie for joining us, who's not here at the moment. Likes of who's now moved here, Luke, Michael, and Bryce for joining us in the show. We will be live, hopefully, come the end of January on Radio ENRG. You'll find us link for our social links and for Radio ENRG in the description below. Anything you guys want to add to the end of the show? Well, actually, now that I think of it, a moment we've not done yet in a while is our moment of the week, moment of the month that we've missed. Anything you'd like to throw into the mix of your moments, special moments? I'll go to you. Scott Sinclair.
Mine is just Dunfermline beat Ray.
And I'm going to go for those 2 scorpion kicks that were scored in the Premier League. So thanks as always for joining in. Heated discussion as always with the likes of Liverpool and Manchester United. But as we end the show, Michael turns off his camera, turns it back on, and Chelsea's win has stopped. Spurs stop it, and we've still got halfway to go. So thank you all for joining in as always.